The Venusian plateau rises not as a single monolithic structure but as a patchwork of elevated regions, each formed by ancient upwellings, buried lava plains, and crustal domes shaped by pressures far beneath the surface. Though the planet's clouded veil hides these features from casual view, radar mapping has slowly revealed their contours. They span hundreds of kilometers, fractured and uplifted over eons, spread like vast scars across the upper highlands of Venus. Unlike the dry, abrasive landscapes of Mars or the wind-scoured plains of Mercury, the Venusian plateau is dynamic in its silence. It is not the movement of tectonic plates that draws attention, for Venus lacks active plate tectonics as we understand them. Instead, it is the thermal rhythm, the periodic release of heat from beneath its thick crust, that has puzzled observers. Infrared instruments, aboard orbiters shielded from the corrosive upper atmosphere, have captured patterns too regular to ignore, heat emissions rising from specific regions in near-perfect intervals. Every 6 Earth days, almost precisely, the emissions spike. This occurs not sporadically, but across multiple sites simultaneously, as if the planet itself breathes through the crust. Not with gases or lava, but with warmth, brief pulses of heat that ripple outward then fade, returning the landscape to its dormant glow. The causes remain speculative. Some posit a cyclical buildup and release of subsurface pressure, akin to geysers but without eruption. Others wonder if deep convection plumes rise steadily, heating certain regions before sinking once more. But what makes this pattern uncanny is its consistency. Too precise for geological randomness, too localized to be simple atmospheric interference. The plateau itself is lifeless to the eye. Its basaltic surfaces are scorched and ancient, reshaped by time and temperature extremes. Yet within the invisible band of infrared, its rhythm endures. Some researchers have proposed crystalline structures within the subsurface layers, compounds capable of heat storage and release, forming natural cycles of energy accumulation. Others suggest chemical reactions, activated under pressure, that function like thermal batteries, charging in the planet's long nights, discharging in pulses when thresholds are reached. The planet's rotation, too, enters consideration. Venus rotates slowly, one day lasting longer than its year. Yet the emissions do not match this cycle. They follow an internal clock, indifferent to solar input. Some speculate this implies a planetary resonance, a kind of mechanical timing buried deep in the mantle. If so, it would suggest systems within Venus far more complex than previously believed, systems with memory, with balance, with thresholds. No spacecraft has yet descended to this plateau and survived. The last landers lasted mere hours, their electronics overwhelmed by heat and pressure. The atmosphere is thick with carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid clouds, with surface temperatures high enough to melt lead. Observation remains remote, and theories remain models, shadows and data, shaped by instruments orbiting high above. There have been suggestions of repeating magnetic anomalies corresponding to these thermal intervals, tiny fluctuations in the planet's weak magnetic signature, as if something conductive responds in tandem with the pulses. Instruments sensitive enough to confirm this would need shielding yet unseen. But the possibility lingers that beneath the crust, layers not just of rock but of organized materials shift, release, and rest. The plateau's scale suggests a natural formation, but scale does not preclude design. Earth hosts rhythmic geological patterns, geysers, lava lakes, caldera breathings. But Venus is different. Its internal workings remain veiled, and in that veiling grows the space for uncertainty. Are these intervals the signs of natural mechanics, or something older, long since dormant, but never fully stopped? There are echoes in the data. Small harmonics, overlapping spikes. Some data analysts have run Fourier transformations on the emission curves, and in some frequency bands, odd regularities appear, suggesting resonance. Perhaps even modulation. Not communication, not intention, but order. The kind of order which, on Earth, is only found in systems built for feedback, ecological, mechanical, or otherwise. Could the planet be responding to forces not yet understood? Could tides, gravitational or electromagnetic, trigger these emissions? Venus has no moon, but the sun's pull still acts. Some believe these emissions reflect a hidden cycle tied to solar behavior, perhaps involving induced currents within a subsurface conductor. But the energy involved is too small, and the correlation incomplete. For now, the data continues. Pulse after pulse, from locations known and suspected. No catastrophe follows. No eruption, no quake, no fallout. Just heat. Rising, falling, as it has done long before detection. The emissions do not increase or decrease, they maintain. They do not warn. They do not shift with solar weather or orbital changes. They persist. And in that persistence lies the intrigue. Something beneath the plateau acts in rhythm. Something acts in time. Between distant stars, the silence can seem eternal. Yet across a small cluster of systems, separated by light years, but close enough to map as neighbors, astronomers have noticed an odd absence. Not in the stars themselves, nor in their light or gravity, but in radio. These systems are quiet. Not in the sense of not broadcasting, most stars do not, but in the sense that they seem to lack the ambient background noise expected from cosmic sources. Normally, space is rich with radio static. Pulsars emit regular bursts. Quasars flicker with energy from ancient collisions. Even empty sectors hum faintly from interstellar gas interactions and cosmic microwave background scatter. Yet in this region, known informally as the Silent Fold, a dip in radio noise appears, sharp, clean, and defined. Sensitive radio telescopes, sweeping across frequencies, find these areas unusually still. No known objects account for the silence. No gas clouds, no obstructions, no gravitational anomalies. Just stars, mostly ordinary, main-sequence suns with a scattering of planets, set within a band of suppressed emissions. The anomaly first appeared in cross-check data, subtle gaps in the expected hiss of the sky. At first, it was written off as interference or instrument bias, but repeated scans from different observatories confirmed the silence. It was not a fluke. Something in that sector muted the usual cosmic chatter. Researchers turned to possibilities. One hypothesis suggested self-damping plasma environments, regions where ionized particles absorb radio waves rather than reflect them. But no supporting optical or X-ray evidence emerged. Another proposed an ancient supernova remnant, its effects long faded but still altering the local medium. Yet again, no traces aligned. More radical theories followed. Some speculated about advanced civilizations practicing radio silence, not out of secrecy, but as a cultural or practical standard. Entire systems, deliberately quiet, not merely refraining from communication, but absorbing stray emissions, cleaning their space, suppressing noise. To do so would require massive infrastructure, fields of antennae, absorptive satellites, or some form of engineered plasma net. But none are visible. The planets in the silent systems appear unremarkable in visible and infrared bands. A few gas giants. A rocky world or two. No megastructures, no Dyson shells. If such civilizations exist, their technology leaves no visible trace, only the absence of noise. Others offer less exotic explanations, dark molecular clouds absorbing specific frequencies, or gravitational lensing effects distorting the received signal. But these models struggle to explain the uniformity. The silence is too clean. It does not fluctuate with stellar activity or galactic drift. It holds, consistent across systems, constant over years. Some researchers have tested the boundaries, sending low-frequency signals into the zone and waiting for reflections. So far, nothing returns. The signals pass through or vanish entirely. The silence is not mirrored. It is absorptive. More speculative minds wonder if this is not silence but camouflage, an engineered background, calibrated to erase signs of activity from beyond. A stealth zone on a cosmic scale. Not for hiding from us, but perhaps from each other. The idea is not without precedent in theory. If civilizations reached a level where they no longer wish to be heard, they might neutralize their electromagnetic signatures. But such effort implies motive, fear, discipline, agreement, or perhaps automation, ancient machines set to mute, long after purpose was forgotten. Whatever the cause, the silence remains. No new emissions appear. No background noise grows. The fold stays quiet. An interruption in the static of space, more noticeable for what it lacks than for what it contains. And all we can do is listen and record the quiet. High above the surfaces of countless inhospitable worlds, there drift clouds, massive, layered, persistent. On some planets, these are merely elements of weather, systems of convection and circulation, driven by temperature gradients and solar energy. But among the more extreme and lifeless exoplanets, observers have noted a particular phenomenon that does not align neatly with known atmospheric models. On a selection of these worlds, gas giants, rocky planets, and super-Earths alike, orbiting well beyond their stars' habitable zones or far too close for liquid water to exist, there appear to be cloud formations arranged in stark, concentric bands. These layers are not diffuse or shifting as on Earth. They hold geometric precision. Circular, nested, and stacked, as if deposited rather than formed. Initially observed in infrared scans, these rings revealed themselves in their uniform temperature profiles. Thermal mapping showed boundaries as sharp as the bands of Saturn, but suspended in vapor rather than frozen particulate. The circular clouds do not drift with the planet's rotation as expected. In several cases, they resist prevailing winds, maintain altitude, and persist for years without visible dispersal. One such planet, catalogued under a designation in a deep sky survey, became the subject of concentrated observation. With no moon, no magnetosphere, and no tectonic features, the world should have had a relatively smooth atmospheric distribution. Yet its upper layers hosted 6 distinct rings of particulate matter, each spaced evenly, each matching the curvature of the planet's horizon. The material composition of the clouds was complex. Spectral analysis suggested ammonia, silicates, carbon compounds, none surprising. But it was the layering that remained anomalous. Not merely stratified by mass or temperature, but ordered, organized. Some suggested unknown chemistry at work, molecular structures that form in circular tension under the right conditions. Others proposed static electrical forces binding particles along invisible boundaries, perhaps seeded by meteor impacts or volcanic activity. But there were no surface markers of such events, and the planet showed no signs of interior motion. Simulations struggled. No known atmospheric model could sustain the rings for more than a few weeks. Winds, pressure systems, and solar input should disrupt them. But they remained intact, redrawn season after season. It was as though something enforced symmetry. The idea of artificial structuring surfaced quietly, without formal claim. A few research notes suggested that if such clouds were not natural, they would require guidance. Perhaps scaffolding hidden in the upper atmosphere, or airborne fields directing particulate flow. No evidence of such machinery appeared in visual or magnetic scans. But then again, nothing about the rings made conventional sense. A few comparative theories referenced Earth-based plasma experiments, where electromagnetic fields formed donut-shaped rings in laboratory chambers. Perhaps, some speculated, the planet itself generated a field capable of shaping matter this way, some side effect of internal resonance, or remnant of ancient activity. Others saw in the clouds a signature of past terraforming, an experiment abandoned, a system malfunctioning but stable. Or perhaps a warning system, its original purpose lost, persisting as geometry in the sky. In more speculative circles, the rings were considered a form of encoding. Information layered in motionless form, a planetary scale signal, fixed in cloud. But if they contained data, it was undecipherable. The structures repeated, but not perfectly. Their edges blurred slightly with time. Measurement showed oscillations, small deviations from symmetry, suggesting decay or slow transformation. The planets with these features are not clustered. They appear across widely separated star systems, with no shared formation age or type. Some are scorched, orbiting too close to their stars. Others are frozen and dark. Yet each hosts the same improbable structure, a set of circular clouds that should not be. These rings do not emit. They do not pulse or spin. They are silent features, observed only in passivity. Yet they inspire a peculiar discomfort among some observers, not fear, but uncertainty. Not because of what they are, but because of what must exist to sustain them. What governs the persistence of structure in chaos? What preserves geometry in a place without design? Are these rings leftovers from a process now dormant, or are they maintained still, by mechanisms we cannot see, following rules we do not yet understand? In the vast stillness of space, even a shape can provoke questions that numbers cannot answer. Far beyond the rim of charted systems, on a small moon orbiting a cold, dim gas giant, an anomaly was discovered, not in motion, not in light, but in thermal signature. The moon was otherwise unremarkable, icy, inert, with a fractured surface of frozen nitrogen and carbon dioxide. But its polar region contained a shallow depression that emitted residual warmth inconsistent with environmental models. The heat was not volcanic, nor did it indicate subsurface lakes. It was steady, low-grade, and tightly confined, an oval footprint only a few kilometers across. From orbit, the region resembled a bowl carved into the ice, its edges smooth and gradual, its center perfectly level. Radar imaging revealed more. Within the depression lay a series of equidistant points, arranged in a radial pattern. They did not protrude or sink. They were density anomalies, objects buried beneath the ice, evenly spaced, possibly hollow. Spectral scans returned ambiguous results. The materials did not match the surrounding crust, but neither did they show signs of metal or manufactured composition. Just silence. And heat. The theory emerged slowly, a vault. A chamber, sealed and dormant, buried under kilometers of frozen matter. What it contained, none could say. But the design, if it was design, hinted at purpose. Even in its inactivity, it showed signs of planning. The term, hibernation moon, took hold in scientific commentary. It was not official, but it captured the mood. A place designed not for life, but for delay, for preservation, for waiting. Was this a shelter? A library? A seed bank? Was it alien? Ancient human? A natural geological fluke interpreted through the lens of expectation? All possibilities were entertained. None confirmed. Efforts to probe deeper were delayed. The moon's distance from Earth was immense. Too far for crude missions, too dangerous for direct landing without extensive mapping. robotic probes would require decades to reach it. In the meantime, data accumulated. The warmth persisted. The structure held. And one detail began to worry analysts. The heat signature was not constant. It pulsed. Very faintly. Not in precise intervals, but in waves. Slow, uneven, but present. The suggestion arose that the vault, or whatever lay below, might not be entirely passive. That it might be regulating internal temperature. That some mechanism remained active. A deeper analysis of the radial pattern showed minute shifts in position, sub-millimeter movements over the span of years. Settling? Pressure? Or motion? The idea of a time capsule evolved into something else. Not just storage, but sleep. A chamber for hibernation, not of animals, but of knowledge, machines, or forms of life unknown. Could something remain preserved for millions of years? On Earth, organic material decays, even in permafrost. But here, in near absolute cold, with no atmosphere, no life, no erosion, perhaps, if intelligence once roamed this system, or passed through it, perhaps this moon was left behind, not as a marker, but as insurance. A place untouched by light, war, or decay. A final fallback. The concept of an ice vault took shape. Entire civilizations might rise and fall while its contents slept in thermal stillness. If it was ever meant to be found, that intent was long buried with its builders. If not, then its discovery was a coincidence of angle, orbit, and attention. We may never reach it. We may never know what lies below. But its existence poses a question more potent than any answer. What do civilizations choose to preserve when all else is lost? Between the clusters of galaxies, where the cosmic web stretches thin and the dark matter scaffolding becomes diffuse, there are lanes, immense stretches of space devoid not only of stars, but of gas, dust, and measurable radiation. These are not the common voids found throughout the universe, which are often hundreds of millions of light-years wide and scattered with faint dwarf galaxies. The structure in question is narrower, more defined. A filament of absence, curiously linear. Detected first by gravitational lensing anomalies, it was later confirmed through absence. Observations noted where background galaxies should have been subtly lensed or obscured, but were instead entirely unaffected. When cross-checked against deep field imagery and redshift surveys, the same narrow track appeared, a dark corridor, tens of thousands of light-years across, running clean between two well-populated galaxy clusters. No significant gravitational field accompanied it. No halo of invisible mass. No residual radiation. It was not the remnant of a collision or a supervoid formed by chaotic inflation. It was, by all current understanding, not something that should exist in such clean geometry. Yet it was there, a road made not of structure, but of its absence. Among the scientific community, it gained an informal name, the Void Road. A name born not from theory, but from the shape, the stark clarity of its absence in all wavelengths, like a corridor carved across the darkness. Initial theories struggled to explain the alignment. Gravity, in large-scale cosmology, pulls unevenly. Filaments bend. Structures form organically. But this void was linear, straight within measurable tolerances. It did not bow under the weight of time or matter. Simulations, run in clusters of supercomputers, could not reproduce its shape without introducing constraints, forced variables, manipulated conditions. Natural formation, as we understand it, does not lead to this. The question arose, was it natural at all? Could something have cleared this space? Not with energy or force in the conventional sense, but with a process beyond current physics. Some suggested advanced civilizations, intergalactic in scale, might manipulate matter across such distances. not by moving stars, but by influencing early conditions of star formation, or even altering the fabric of space-time. If one wished to hide, or to send a signal, or to create a corridor of non-interference, perhaps this is what it would look like. Others proposed more esoteric possibilities. Could the void road be a scar left by the passage of something vast, something that moved not through space, but displaced its very geometry as it passed? This would not be a vessel or an object, in any conventional sense, but a disturbance, a migrating hole in the potential for matter, leaving nothing in its wake. There is also the notion of resonance. That in the early moments after the Big Bang, standing waves or fluctuations in dark energy might have created a region where matter could not settle, an accidental null line in the music of the cosmos. A place where existence itself failed to stabilize. But this idea falters under scrutiny. The age and distribution of the surrounding galaxies suggests that the void was not always there, or at least, not always so linear. The galaxies curve around it, not as if repelled, but as if grown in knowledge of its presence, shaped by its boundaries. As though something enforced a corridor. In newer models, the void road is neither a fluke nor a scar, but a relic, an intentional space. Its edges are not sharply defined, but overlaid with faint distortions. Gravitational fields along its boundaries shift subtly. Light curves slightly too much near its edge. This could be lensing, or it could be evidence of manipulation. More advanced theories draw on the concept of engineered vacuum states, a region where the laws of physics are altered, or where constants differ. A place where time flows differently, or entropy resets. Such ideas belong more to theoretical physics than astronomy, but their implications draw attention. If the void road is a created feature, if it was shaped, enforced, or preserved, then it suggests knowledge orders of magnitude beyond anything known. Not simply of stars and matter, but of the fabric in which they are held. There are no known objects within the void. No rogue planets, no ancient probes, no radiation trails. And yet, the emptiness draws observation. Like a path unused, but not forgotten. For some, it is a curiosity. For others, a threat. For most, it remains an open question, a place in the sky where the rules do not behave as they should, and where silence is shaped not by absence, but by intention. It reminds the observer that the universe may still contain boundaries not of matter, but of meaning. That not all roads are built for travel, some are built to mark the space between. And that even in the emptiest corners of the cosmos, structure can reside not in what is, but in what has been carefully kept from becoming. The systems at the edge of what we can meaningfully observe sit in a kind of twilight, visible in data, yet shrouded by distance and distortion. Some emit erratic light curves. Others pulse too regularly, as if under control. But one system, lying near the edge of a starfield catalog during a deep field survey sweep, drew attention not for what it emitted, but for what surrounded it. Over a span of years, radio telescopes mapped emissions from a neighboring group of young stars, common variable emitters, producing the usual sweep of radio bursts and ionized jets. But when survey teams compiled the data into a composite map, something unexpected emerged. The signals from these stars seemed to dim, not at random, but in rhythmic intervals. More curious still, the rhythm was not individual to each star, but shared between them. The emission patterns dipped and returned in unison, synchronous radio silences across systems separated by dozens of light years. Each star's spectrum behaved independently at other times. Their chemical signatures varied. Their ages and classifications spanned types from orange dwarfs to blue subgiants. Yet during these silences, lasting minutes or sometimes hours, they all grew quiet together. Natural explanation was the first pursuit. Could this be an effect of cosmic dust or interstellar clouds, absorbing or redirecting the emissions on a shared path toward Earth? But the light curves and emissions from other nearby stars showed no such behavior. The silences were localized. Could it be an observational artifact? A malfunction in the telescope arrays, a software glitch? Reanalysis confirmed the result across instruments, observatories, even continents. Different detectors, different days, same silence. Then came the attempt to find timing patterns. Analysts noted that the silences did not follow orbital mechanics. They did not align with stellar rotation or expected solar cycles. But they were regular, within a narrow range. Some posited a shared magnetic influence, a galactic scale field that triggered plasma suppression in stellar atmospheres. But again, no broader pattern emerged. Only these few systems showed it. And always together. Speculation widened. Could there be something between the stars? Not a gas or dust, but an organized structure? A shared field, or influence, or network? If not natural, then perhaps artificial, structures distributed across systems, coordinating emission control. Not for communication, but for silence. The idea of interstellar synchronization is not new. On Earth, satellites and beacons share timekeeping to coordinate systems. But to enforce synchronization on stars would require tools operating at stellar scales, capable not only of understanding their mechanics, but influencing them. No evidence supports this directly. No emissions suggest active modulation. But the pattern lingers. Silences recur. Sometimes separated by days, sometimes by weeks. But they return, and always together. There are faint anomalies in the energy spectrum during the silences, shifts too subtle to parse, but measurable. A narrow band dip in emissions otherwise unaffected by known stellar processes. It is possible, some suggest, that these systems are being used as instruments themselves, not by us, but by others. That the stars are part of a larger structure, used as nodes, or markers, or something still beyond comprehension. Not beacons, not messages, but clocks. Clocks that tick not by broadcasting, but by pausing, by withholding. The silences may not be directed at Earth. We may be incidental observers. But the coordination, the scale, the precision, these speak of something vast. Something that thinks in centuries, and measures in orbits. We can only listen. The stars do not speak. But their quiet may hold intention. In the outskirts of a minor arm of the galaxy, an anomalous planetary system drew brief attention during a mapping operation focused on brown dwarfs. It was not the star that caught attention, it was the planet and its atmosphere. The planet was deemed uninhabitable by every standard. A super-Earth with crushing gravity, blistering temperatures, and a volatile, acidic atmosphere. Nothing could live there. Nothing should endure there. Yet the clouds, satellites passing through its shadow recorded consistent backscatter in ultraviolet bands. Not unusual, many atmospheres reflect UV. But here, the reflections showed curvature, precision. A pattern that repeated in circular arrangements at multiple latitudes. At first, these were thought to be sensor anomalies. But the same geometry appeared in microwave, then infrared, then radar. Each time, circular cloud formations emerged. And not just rings, vortices within them, turning with regulated momentum, nested like gears. Atmospheric modeling struggled. On gas giants such as Jupiter, storm systems create long-lived ovals and belts. But they are chaotic, always changing. Here, the cloud patterns were not only stable but mechanically spaced. Their centers aligned. Their edges echoed in temperature gradients. It was suggested these were pressure nodes, regions where wind and heat created harmonics, like standing waves in an ocean. But this analogy failed when the vortices shifted position without losing form, as if following invisible tracks in the atmosphere. The temperature across these layers oscillated in a cycle of exactly 11.33 Earth hours. Too exact for random variation, too synchronized for weather. When simulations inserted atmospheric anomalies, such as trace reactive gases, the models produced disarray. Only under carefully balanced conditions, with non-standard chemical layers and injected thermal regulators, did the patterns hold. What could cause such regulators to exist? Volcanoes could not. Impact events would disrupt, not stabilize. Some researchers introduced the idea of atmospheric seeding, nanoscopic particles, evenly distributed, that adjust heat dissipation and reflectivity. These, too, would require origin. No emissions of artificial origin were detected. No satellites, no ground structures. Just the clouds. But their persistence, their shape, defied simple models. A secondary hypothesis surfaced that these clouds are memory. Not active systems, but the residue of systems. A world once shaped, now abandoned. Cloud layers as skeletal remains of atmospheric control, shadows of terraforming, long after purpose faded. This would require stability, ancient infrastructure, or chemical inertia, or processes so finely tuned that they could persist without input. The planet remains untouched. No missions have been launched. No closer scans taken. It spins in its orbit, layer upon layer of circular cloud, caught in quiet motion. And we observe. From a distance where nothing can be touched. And the question remains, what shapes clouds when nothing lives beneath them? In the cold interstellar reaches beyond most known systems, astronomers once catalogued a moon with little fanfare. Locked in orbit around a substellar object, a faint brown dwarf barely emitting light, it was noted only for its unusual density. It was small, irregularly shaped, and composed largely of ice and silicates. No surface activity, no atmosphere, no magnetosphere. It was catalogued and passed over. Years later, reanalysis of archival thermal data raised a question. The moon's surface registered as colder than the cosmic microwave background, the residual radiation from the Big Bang itself. That should have been impossible. The cosmic microwave background, measured at roughly 2.7 Kelvin, is the baseline temperature of space. No natural object without active cooling should dip below it. But this moon's surface read consistently at 2.3 Kelvin. Not just one anomaly, but confirmed across multiple scans, decades apart, using independent instruments. The immediate suspicion was sensor error. But no other bodies in the same data set showed similar deviation. It was not a flaw in the system. It was real. And then came the deeper scans. Infrared mapping revealed the texture beneath the ice. Not visible structure, but regularity. Pockets of differing densities, laid out in concentric rings, nested spheres, and radial filaments. Patterns within patterns, layered with too much symmetry to be geological. It appeared artificial. Not like architecture, but like data storage. The term, cold archive, began circulating informally among researchers. It suggested not only preservation, but intention. The temperature, far below equilibrium, might be maintained not for function, but for permanence. At such low temperatures, molecular motion slows to near standstill. Radioactive decay lessens. Electrical activity ceases. Chemistry enters stasis. A material placed within such an environment could remain unchanged for billions of years. But how would such cold be maintained? The vacuum of space cannot cool below the ambient radiation of the cosmos. The only explanation offered was active shielding. Not energetic fields, those would emit, but insulation. something layered over the structure to reflect, absorb, and contain, preventing even trace heat from reaching the interior. Such materials are theoretical, but not impossible. Some speculated that the moon is not natural at all, but constructed, a disguised satellite, orbiting a faint star for camouflage. If so, its purpose might not be communication or travel, but storage. The notion of hibernation returns, this time, not of life, but of knowledge. Information stored not in digital form, but in matter, molecular arrangements, crystallized states, subatomic alignments. Forms of data encoding that rely not on processors, but on permanence. Others propose it is not memory being preserved, but time itself. That the moon holds something which must remain unchanged, until a condition is met, a threshold crossed, a signal received. Or perhaps it is waiting, not to awaken, but to be discovered. No known probe has reached it. Its distance from Earth, combined with a lack of strategic importance, has left it unvisited. But a few institutions have begun quiet planning, missions that may take a century to prepare and decades to complete. And still, the moon turns. Frozen beyond theory. Beneath its surface, the silence is not merely absence, it is locked potential. Drifting between stars, at the edge of what gravitational tethers can hold, lie objects with no allegiance. Rogue planets, cast out of their systems, floating in isolation. Most are dark, cold, invisible to standard observation. But one, discovered via gravitational microlensing, left a trail. Not of matter or heat, but of interruption. As light from a background star passed behind it, astronomers recorded a series of precise flickers, not a smooth lensing curve, but sharp modulations. Like light being blocked and revealed by structure. The implication, rings. This would not be unusual for a gas giant. Saturn has rings. Uranus, too. But this rogue object was not gaseous. It was rocky, with mass only a few times that of Earth. Its rings were too large, too distant, and too symmetrical. Follow-up observations found nothing. The object was gone, too distant to relocate. But the data remained. Dozens of reputable teams confirmed the signature. Then came the archival hunt. Old sky surveys were reprocessed. And elsewhere, years earlier, another lensing anomaly, different sky, same pattern. It matched. The suggestion, not a single rogue planet but a group. Traveling together, or following a path. Some began calling them the Wanderers. Objects with rings not formed by impact or debris, but placed. Configured. The rings themselves could serve many purposes. Observation. Energy harvesting. Communication. Or something entirely unknown. But their precision defied natural explanation. In one model, the rings act as stabilizers, keeping the planet's rotation perfectly aligned. But for what purpose? There is no star to orbit, no heat to harvest. Unless they are not just moving. Unless they are returning. Some believe the Wanderers are relics of a vanished civilization, planet ships, flung across space before collapse. Others think they are instruments, spreading through the galaxy to gather data silently, reporting not through radio but through motion, gravity, and light. They may not be alive. They may not think. But they may still act. To be seen is not their goal. But once seen, they are not forgotten. A planetary system once thought lifeless revealed, through accidental observation, an anomaly beneath its crust. A seismic event on one of its moons, a jagged, frozen satellite, triggered vibrations that echoed longer than expected. Seismographs placed on a flyby probe, intended to study tidal forces, captured reverberations with unusual profiles. The waves did not fade with depth. Instead, they accelerated, as if reflecting inward and back again. Deeper analysis revealed partial harmonic feedback, a signature more typical of enclosed spaces. The suggestion, caverns, chambers, or structured voids beneath the surface. Some of the echoes appeared to overlap, not randomly, but at precise intervals, like signals repeating through a transmission channel. The notion of a hollow moon is not new, but here, the data implied organization. And within that, perhaps occupancy, past or present. The silence of the surface, the ice-crusted stillness, concealed a resonance too clean to ignore. Not chaos, not decay, but design. Among the countless patterns that emerge in astronomical data, most are fleeting, transients, flares, noise folded into chaos. But over time, a new category of object began to appear in the records of wide-field radio telescopes. Not bursts, not pulses, not repeating signals. Instead, silence punctuated by an absence so regular that it became signal in itself. These events were first noticed not by scientists, but by algorithms trained to detect anomalies. The software flagged certain regions where the ambient radio background dropped sharply, far sharper than natural variation would allow. At first, the dips were dismissed as data loss. But further scrutiny revealed consistency, specific areas where cosmic radio noise was periodically, precisely, and measurably suppressed. Not blocked, not absorbed, suppressed. In these regions, the radio background, not from a specific source, but the diffuse hum of the universe itself, dimmed at regular intervals. The phenomenon was narrow-band but detectable across a range of frequencies. Each event lasted between 11 and 17 seconds. The intervals were irregular, but the suppression itself was not. It was clean, sharp-edged, and total. A signal that was, in essence, a lack of signal. The silence came from no particular point. It did not radiate outward, nor did it move across the sky. It simply appeared, and then resolved. As if a shutter had closed, somewhere, and opened again. The effect could not be traced to local interference. The anomalies were visible from multiple observation points around the world, sometimes simultaneously. They crossed telescopes, hemispheres, and instruments. What could cause silence to travel this way? One proposal: interstellar objects containing fields or structures capable of refracting radio waves. As they moved through space, they left behind trails of silence, not by emitting, but by erasing. Another hypothesis suggested a network, an arrangement of beacons or satellites. Not to broadcast, but to cancel. Interference run in reverse. A mesh designed to mute certain frequencies, deployed across wide distances. More daring theories proposed that these intervals were a form of logic, a language not built on sound, but on interruption. That in the spaces between the silence, meaning might be encoded. Teams attempted to sequence the events, looking for prime intervals, harmonic relationships, repeating ratios. Some found suggestion. None found confirmation. The silence persisted. These voids did not align with known structures. No stars, no nebulae, no galaxies of note. Often, the silence emerged from sectors considered empty by all standard measures. But it continued, and it increased. Over years, new silent intervals appeared. Not clustered, but evenly spaced. Like posts marking a path. If these were artifacts of technology, they belonged to no known logic. If they were natural, they violated the models. Some researchers quietly began to refer to them as null gates. Not because they led anywhere, but because they implied a limit, a point where normal patterns ended, and something else began. One astronomer noted, in a published but little-read paper, that the distribution of these silent points formed not a line, but a lattice, an invisible scaffold stretched across vast distances. The silence might not be random at all. It might be structural. If true, it suggests that the space between stars is not empty, but arranged. Not filled with energy, but with rules. And the silences we observe may be nothing more than brief glimpses into a framework too vast to grasp. Moments when the machinery of the cosmos aligns just enough to show its shape. In the early days of deep infrared astronomy, a faint emission was catalogued from a distant, unremarkable quadrant of sky. It showed no movement, no variation. It glowed faintly in a smooth curve, peaking at wavelengths that suggested warmth, just above the temperature of interstellar dust. It was ignored. For years, it remained nothing more than a background feature. Then, a new instrument with higher resolution imaged the region in finer detail. The glow resolved, not into a star, not into a galaxy, but into a spiral. A perfect logarithmic spiral, dozens of light years across. Its arms did not contain stars. They did not hold dust clouds or clusters. Instead, they emitted uniformly, glowing in thermal bands with no visible structure. The spiral was made of warmth alone, floating in space. No natural process, as currently understood, can produce such a feature. Spirals do occur in nature: hurricanes, galaxies, even the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. But they are emergent patterns, formed by turbulence, by spin, by accumulation. They are messy. This spiral was not messy. Its arms were equidistant. Its curvature matched mathematical precision to 6 decimal places. And it did not spin. That was the most unsettling part. Galaxies rotate. Hurricanes swirl. But the spiral in space was fixed. Stationary. Emitting heat as if from nowhere, cooling only gradually over decades. There was no central body. No black hole, no star, no mass at all. The radiation signature suggested a slowly decaying source of energy, possibly once generated by exotic particles or confined plasma, now drifting outward in patterns once held in place. If so, the spiral may have once been something more. A containment field. A beacon. An artifact built not of matter, but of energy, sculpted and held in form through control no longer active. And if that's the case, then it is not a structure we are seeing. It is an afterimage. A fading memory of precision, glowing faintly in the deep cold. Efforts to map the surrounding region found nothing else unusual. No corresponding objects, no gravitational anomalies. But the spiral remained. Faint. Dimming. Its decay is expected to complete in the next few centuries, assuming no interference. But even now, its geometry can be modeled. It follows rules not native to turbulence or gravity. Mathematical rules. Designed rules. Some researchers now believe the spiral was a map. Not to a place, but to a concept, a key to understanding space not through stars and voids, but through symmetry and resonance. Others see it as a warning, a final flare from a system too vast to maintain its own machinery. Whatever it was, we arrived too late to ask, but not too late to see. On the inner edge of a distant planetary system, orbiting a star cooler and redder than our Sun, lies a world that defies categorization. It is neither Earth-like nor barren, either frozen nor molten. Instead, it is defined by its atmosphere, thick, stratified, and filled with a complex haze that reflects nearly all visible light. In most telescopic surveys, the planet appears as a faint, indistinct blur. But at one specific set of wavelengths, in the high terahertz band, the planet reveals a recurring feature, a moving band of cold. This band is not tied to latitude or weather patterns. It is not seasonal, nor is it storm-based. It is a perfect, narrow belt, circling the planet longitudinally, and it rotates at a different speed than the planet itself. Unlike a jet stream, it does not meander. Unlike an aurora, it is not confined to the poles. It is a ring of lowered temperature, precise, regular, and apparently maintained. The mechanism is unknown. Thermal models predict that any such feature should quickly dissipate under atmospheric pressure and heat diffusion. Yet the cold band persists, decade after decade, in the same narrow range of altitude, circling the planet like a seal. Its movement is not random. It completes a full circuit every 36 Earth hours, regardless of the planet's day-night cycle. The band remains dark in all visible and infrared light, yet consistently shows contrast in terahertz scans, cooler than the surrounding gas by a fixed margin. Early theories suggested mineral particulates creating localized radiative cooling. But the precision of the belt, its razor-sharp boundaries and constant speed, made that unlikely. Then came the theory of energy harvesting, that the band is the result of active regulation, possibly extracting or redistributing heat, possibly a byproduct of a much larger system. What kind of system would regulate heat in a thin longitudinal path around an otherwise hostile world? And why in that form, with such stability? The idea of planetary infrastructure took hold. That this belt might be an exposed feature of a buried network, or a coolant layer for subsurface installations. Perhaps even the thermal boundary of a shielded region, maintained by something deeper. Radar scans cannot penetrate the atmosphere at the required resolution. The haze is too dense, too turbulent in lower layers. No surface features have been observed. But simulations suggest something else. The belt is not a symptom of surface activity. Instead, it appears to be generated from above, a ceiling rather than a floor. A rotating field, perhaps, created by orbital mechanisms or suspended constructs. If so, they are invisible to current instruments. Another hypothesis proposes an electromagnetic origin. A planetary scale ring current, interacting with trace elements in the atmosphere, could create localized cooling under the right conditions. But this would require precise field shaping, and the planet's magnetic signature is weak. So the belt remains unexplained, its presence unchanged. Some researchers have proposed the belt as not an artifact, but a marker, a deliberate feature, encoded not to function, but to be seen. Something left behind. A signature drawn in cold. One team mapped the belt's movement and noted faint modulations in its speed, imperceptible to most, but traceable in long-term data. These modulations form a waveform. If that waveform is noise, it is uncannily regular. If it is a message, it is beyond our syntax. And so the belt turns. Around the planet we cannot touch, under a haze we cannot see through. A ring of silence, colder than the air around it, circling forever. It may be the only sign of intention ever found there. Not far from the edge of the Orion Arm, nestled within a nondescript cluster of yellow stars, lies a small planetary system once thought sterile. But as instruments improved, the innermost planet revealed a feature both subtle and profound, a reflective pattern carved into the planet's albedo. This is not visible in casual observation. It was detected only through spectral analysis of the planet's reflected light. Anomalies in polarization and scattering ratios that suggested alignment far too ordered to be geological. The pattern was rotationally symmetric, hexagonal in base geometry, and covered roughly 20% of the planet's equatorial region. The planet itself is scorched, too close to its parent star for any atmosphere to survive. Its surface is likely glass, rock, and metal, shaped by tidal heating and radiation. Yet this reflective pattern endures. It does not change over time. It does not shift with orbital phase or starspot activity. It remains fixed. The reflectivity is not due to materials known to form naturally under such conditions. Instead, it matches spectral fingerprints of rare, crystalline silicates, arranged in a structure consistent with intentional layering. This implies either fabrication or deposition at scale, on a dead world by unknown means. The scale is immense. To produce such a pattern across a planetary surface would require coordination across thousands of kilometers. Even on Earth, such macro-engineering would challenge the limits of logistics. What purpose could it serve? Some suggest a navigational marker, something visible only through specific spectral filters, designed to persist where no other signals could. Others believe it could be a calibration array, a standard of measurement left for future observers, meant to be discovered only by those who knew what to look for. Another hypothesis sees the pattern as a transmission frozen in place, not in time, but in geometry. An encoded message expressed not in language, but in form. But if it is a message, it is one without reference. No guide, no legend, no syntax. Only symmetry. Efforts to decode it have yielded no consensus. A few pattern recognition algorithms found repetitions suggestive of binary structure. Others found nothing beyond the shape itself. But still the pattern remains. On a world without life, without air, without change, where everything has been scoured by solar wind and radiation, except this. It endures not because it must, but because it was made to. In a region of space long considered dull by astronomers, an expanse between spiral arms with few bright stars and little molecular gas, a quiet anomaly was catalogued, a motionless line of low-frequency radio emissions. Not a pulse. Not a signal. Just a line. The emissions spanned light years, but its frequency held constant. It did not originate from a point source. Instead, it was distributed evenly along its entire length, as if the signal itself were a line in space, rather than something broadcast through it. Mapping it required coordination across observatories and years of Doppler correction. The emission did not drift. It held against galactic motion, which meant it could not be local. Its origin was not galactic. It might not even be stellar. Some speculated it was a relic, an echo of primordial conditions. Others argued for unknown cosmic strings, theoretical constructs that might radiate in straight lines. But the signal lacked energy. It emitted just above background, requiring deep integration to even confirm its presence. And yet, its regularity is unmistakable. Mathematical. Unflinching. One physicist proposed that the line is not a signal at all, but a boundary. Not between places, but between states. The kind of state where laws of physics shift slightly, just enough that light behaves differently, or entropy flows a fraction faster. The line could be a seam in the universe's topology. Or it could be something placed. Not to signal. Not to communicate. But to contain. We do not know which side we are on. We only know the line exists. Far from the galactic core, on the outskirts of a sparsely populated sector, an object of uncertain classification was detected, neither asteroid nor spacecraft, and yet showing traits of both. Initially catalogued during a routine sky survey, it appeared as a non-reflective mass drifting through the void with no apparent propulsion. Its trajectory was unbound, hyperbolic, moving too quickly to be gravitationally captured by any nearby system. But its path was too precise to be random. What distinguished it was not speed or mass, but orientation. The object, roughly cylindrical and several kilometers long, maintained a perfectly fixed alignment relative to galactic coordinates. Despite gravitational perturbations, stellar winds, and the micro-collisions of interstellar dust, it did not tumble. It did not precess. It pointed. Always. to a fixed region of the galactic halo, a place empty of stars, where no structure of note had been observed. The object emitted nothing. It had no energy signature beyond passive infrared. Its temperature hovered just above the cosmic background. Its surface was smooth in radar reflection, lacking the chaotic geometry of natural rock. Spectral scans indicated a mix of nickel-iron alloy and unknown composites, durable, heat-resistant, chemically inert. Closer observations with synthetic aperture techniques revealed fine linear etchings across its surface. These markings were shallow, precise, and non-random. When unwrapped digitally, the patterns aligned in a projection that matched a polar stereographic map, not of a planet, but of a spatial volume. The volume was empty, or so it appeared. Reanalysis of older stellar drift data in that direction revealed a slight, persistent anomaly. Stars passing behind the target region showed subtle lensing, inconsistent with known mass distributions. Not strong enough to confirm, but just enough to raise suspicion. If something massive exists in that space, it is hidden without being invisible, its presence detectable only by influence, not by light. The object's alignment was not toward the center of the galaxy, nor toward any local cluster. It was aimed at something else, an apparent nothing, faintly bending space around it. The hypothesis formed: the object is a marker. Not a vehicle, not a beacon, but a signpost. Its function is not to reach, but to point. Perhaps others exist, scattered across the galaxy, each fixed toward the same emptiness. A directional network, converging on the silent center of something no longer active, or not yet awakened. Some theorists speculate that the region might be a vault, of mass, of memory, or of something more dangerous. Others propose it is a blind spot in our understanding, where the universe folds or bleeds into a topology we cannot yet perceive. Regardless, the object's orientation has never changed. It has no thrusters, no gyroscopes. Yet it holds. Even as it moves at impossible speed, it does not spin. It maintains perfect attitude, as if the act of pointing were its only task. And maybe that's all it is. A remnant of a vanished civilization, left adrift to fulfill a function with no audience. A compass needle cast into deep space, unburdened by purpose, yet still aligned. There exists, deep in the gravitational well near the edge of a dying star's influence, an orbit that defies orbital mechanics. At first, it was believed to be a distant exoplanet, detected via wobble in its parent star's motion. But follow-up observations showed inconsistencies. The object's orbital period was too stable, too exact. Tidal forces from the dying star should have perturbed its motion over time. Stellar mass loss should have caused the orbit to expand. But the object's trajectory remained fixed. More curiously, the orbit was not elliptical. It was square. Not geometrically square in path, but in energy distribution. The object accelerated and decelerated at 4 precise points along its circuit, matching right-angled transitions. No natural process creates such orbital behavior. Gravity does not permit it. And yet, the object moved as if following tracks, not in space, but in space-time. It was proposed that the orbit was stabilized by an underlying scaffold, a network of gravitational counterbalances or exotic matter threads. But this too seemed improbable. Simulations showed that to create such motion would require continuous correction, guidance systems, propulsion, or the alteration of local inertial frames, which suggested not nature but artifice. Further anomalies emerged. The object, while never visible in the electromagnetic spectrum, occluded background starlight in a consistent manner. Its silhouette was irregular but unchanging. Spectral absorption indicated layered materials, possibly alloys, possibly composite crystalline structures not found in natural planetary bodies. The orbit, when plotted over time, described a looping square wave in a three-dimensional frame, perfectly repeating over centuries. One theory posits that the object is tethered, not physically, but through space-time anchoring. That it follows a path encoded into the structure of the vacuum itself. This would require a manipulation of physics at a foundational level. Gravity wells warped to enforce artificial geometries, fields tuned to maintain orbital integrity against entropy. If the object is a machine, it does not communicate. If it is a monument, it bears no inscription. If it is a message, it is written in motion alone. In the galactic south, a compact stellar nursery known as G127b spawned a flurry of new stars roughly 100 million years ago. Most are ordinary, burning quietly, stabilizing planets, forming debris rings. But one, catalogued briefly before being passed over, showed spectral anomalies. Its light contains absorption lines that do not correspond to any known element. This by itself is not unheard of. Novel isotopes and molecular bands sometimes appear in extreme environments. But the lines in question are narrow, fixed, and appear at equal intervals, like the teeth of a comb. They are not broadened by temperature or smeared by velocity. They are laser sharp. Analysis across different instruments confirmed their presence. The lines do not shift with Doppler motion. They do not vary with time. They are, for lack of a better term, inserted. Not generated by the star's chemistry, but superimposed on its spectrum. This suggests not an intrinsic property, but a filter, a lens. Some device, cloud, or structure may exist between us and the star, applying spectral subtraction to its light. The idea is radical. It implies the ability to selectively remove precise frequencies of light across massive distances without scattering or distortion. The likely candidate, a diffraction grid, artificial and floating, thin as a whisper and large as a continent. Positioned in interstellar space, aligned precisely, it would need no energy source. Just position, just orientation, and motive. What purpose could such a filter serve? One theory, obscuration. A means of hiding chemical signatures, masking stellar age or activity. Another, testing. To see who among distant civilizations would notice. Still another, communication, not in message, but in method. To place a structure so subtle, so deliberate, that only those searching the noise would find the quiet. It may be a watermark, a signature, a calibration device for observers yet unborn. Whatever its purpose, the lines remain unexplained, undeniable, and waiting. On the periphery of an ancient star cluster, long past the peak of its stellar formation, a faint gravitational distortion was recorded by a team analyzing microlensing events. At first, it was dismissed as a background fluctuation, an error in mass estimation, or a passing rogue object. But the distortion was too persistent, too geometrically smooth. Over months, data showed that the anomaly followed a curve, not the chaotic arc of a drifting body, but a precise parabola relative to the cluster's barycenter. It behaved not like an object in orbit, but like a lens in motion, shaping the path of light from behind with careful regularity. The gravitational distortion created no visible occlusion. Stars behind it remained undimmed, but their positions shifted subtly, warped in an arc as though passing near a perfectly engineered gravity well. The curve did not match any known mass. No dark matter clump was present, no corresponding radiation, no emission of any kind. But it moved. Smoothly, predictably, and repeatedly. Every 314 days, it reset its path, repeating the same gravitational contour, as though on a track etched into the fabric of space itself. To manipulate gravity without mass would require manipulation of space-time curvature directly, control not over matter, but over the geometry in which matter exists. One hypothesis likened the effect to a lens carved from absence, an object made not from mass, but from deficit. A shaped vacuum. If such a thing were possible, it would represent not a structure, but a tool, an instrument designed to fold or bend reality gently. Perhaps to scan, perhaps to focus, perhaps to hide. Several possibilities were modeled: a cloaking device, using gravitational lensing to misdirect or distort observations of another object, a data funnel, capturing or redirecting radiation streams, or a passive communication relay, encoded in nothing more than curvature. But what it might be relaying, and to whom, remains unknown. The gravitational signature is precise, but faint, far too subtle to manipulate planetary masses or stellar bodies. It operates on photons alone. In essence, it interacts only with light. If deliberate, it may represent a level of restraint far beyond human engineering, a civilization able to bend the universe itself, but choosing to do so in whispers. At the edge of a small, isolated nebula known as the Moksha Veil, a set of stars flicker with unusual regularity. Their light curves, once thought to be the result of interstellar dust or variable atmospheres, now show signs of deliberate occlusion. Not shadows, not orbits, but masks. Advanced photometry revealed that these stars occasionally dim not in random patterns, but in precise sequences, binary intervals, matching harmonic ratios and recursive timing patterns. It is as if each star is a metronome, briefly altering its output in a way indistinguishable from natural variability, until patterns are compared across multiple stars. Then order emerges. The timings do not align by chance. They form nested cycles, musical ratios, golden mean relationships, primes. The stars are separated by dozens of light years, yet they dim in coordinated bursts, like a chorus keeping time across the void. Natural processes cannot synchronize stars in this manner. Stellar variability depends on mass, age, composition, and environment. These stars differ in all respects, yet they behave as if following a shared rhythm. One interpretation, signaling. A long-form message broadcast through stellar modulation, using stars themselves as instruments. Another, resonance induction. The theory that space itself might carry harmonic fields, and that these fields are being seeded, coaxed into coherence by an unknown mechanism. More radical still is the idea of stellar symphonics, cosmic-scale devices using modulated stars to create a form of gravitational or electromagnetic harmony, perceivable only from afar. In every case, the implication is vast. To shape the behavior of stars across light years is not a project of power, but of patience. It would require understanding stellar interiors, the ability to trigger or suppress minor processes, and the will to let the performance play out over millennia. What we see now may be only the overture. One star flares. Another dims. A third holds still. The pattern recurs, then expands. And across the veil of gas, the music continues, inaudible, but observable. A long song, composed in heat and time. In the deep polar regions of a rogue gas giant, drifting unmoored through the galaxy with no star to warm it, a set of anomalies were found within its magnetic field. The planet was discovered through infrared detection, a massive, cold body emitting only the faintest thermal signature. But as instruments tuned into its magnetosphere, they detected a sequence of pulses. Not electromagnetic emissions, not radio waves, but shifts in the field itself. Twists, rotations, and phase transitions. The field was modulating, not randomly, not cyclically, but in layered steps. Analysis showed that the pattern repeated every 144 hours, then reset with minor variation. A nested structure, reminiscent of certain types of data compression or quantum encoding. The field changes were subtle, detectable only at high resolution, and only under specific observational geometries. They did not originate from the core. They were not the result of natural dynamo activity. They were imposed. One possibility: the planet contains internal structures, non-metallic, non-magnetic, but shaped to redirect existing currents in controlled ways. Another: the field is being manipulated by particles not native to the planet, dark matter interactions, or exotic plasma loops seeded long ago. Still another: the planet was altered. Not recently, but long ago. The modulations may be a relic, an echo of a system built not to emit, but to store. Some researchers now believe the gas giant functions as a magnetic archive. Not of language, not of image, but of phase. Each transition a line, each line a layer. A vault not of matter, but of field geometry, writ across a body so vast it drifts unnoticed, silent except to those who see the shape of its quiet. The giant spins slowly, unlit, untouched by star or system. But within its core, or its field, something endures. Not a call, not a warning, but a form, waiting to be recognized. Across the vast expanse of space, patterns emerge not always in brightness, but in absence. Not always in noise, but in the steadiness of quiet. From Venusian plateaus that pulse with heat for reasons unknown, to the synchronized silences between stars, to spirals made of warmth without mass, these are not conclusions. They are questions, enduring. We observe. We map. We catalog anomalies with careful language. Unexplained possible artifact requires further study. Yet what binds them is not just uncertainty, but consistency. An undercurrent of design threaded through a universe we once thought ruled only by chance and gravity. These phenomena do not shout. They do not demand attention. They wait. Cold bands that circle uninhabitable worlds with the patience of centuries. Signal voids that form not as random gaps, but as shapes in absence. Spectral fingerprints too precise to be noise. Orbits too stable to be natural. Each one small. Insignificant, perhaps, on its own. But together, they form a tapestry too intricate to dismiss. A pattern that may not be made for us, but is visible to us. And in the seeing, we become part of it. The spiral that fades in the infrared. The moon colder than the background of the universe. The motionless object that always points. These are more than puzzles. They are evidence of scale, of patience, of intent unbound by time. We may never know the authors, if authors exist. We may never decode the message, if message was intended. But in our search, we align with something older. A universe not inert, but composed. We drift through it not as tourists, but as witnesses. Not to answers, but to the presence of inquiry itself, echoing back to us in the most stable signal of all, persistence. Somewhere there may be memory. Somewhere there may be reason. But here there is wonder. And it is enough. For now, we mark the data. We file the reports. We build the next telescope. And we wait. Just as it seems the universe has done. Long before we noticed. And long after we are gone.